Good day and welcome to this first edition of Tourismus Namibia after we've brought the expo to you last week live. My name is obviously Frank Steffen. I will be leading you through this program of Tourismus Namibia, where as always we first bring you a couple of topics, then we bring a couple of destinations, giving you some ideas for your holidays, which are obviously coming closer now. And then finally, we'll be looking at to the point at some special issues. To be exact, under topics today, we'll be looking at COP27. Obviously, we'll have a couple of things to discuss there. This is a video called Climate Voices by the United Nations. Then we'll also have a look at the ReconAfrica saga. It's going into a new stage now, so I'll be bringing you a bit of feedback about that. And then finally, we'll, after that, have a look at this Finkenstein bush market. It's actually really a Christmas market. It is normally a bush market, but now it's Christmas time, so we're entering that stage of the year. Then under destinations, we'll talk a bit about Seidarap Guesthouse, that is. Elvira Hutting, she visited them. It's quite close to Grootfontein, so when you're up in the north, this might be a different setting for you to stay at. And then we'll also have a quick look at the Amanzi Trails River Adventures. This was a photo which Chloe Durstel made for us when she actually did the canoeing down the Orange River. And then under to the point, as I said, we'll return a bit to COP27. And there we won't only have a look at what the others have to say in the world, but also at what we in Namibia talk about when it comes to COP27. So I hope you've got an enjoyable show by the time we reach the end. We'll try and keep it short as promised last time around. So up next we've got topics. Yeah, right. Gas and COP27 is what I gave as a heading under this one, the first item for the day under topics. And it's about Thomson Reuters Foundation that reports that it may not be on the official agenda of the COP27 climate summit in Egypt, but the thorny question of whether African nations should receive financial support to produce, use and export natural gas as part of a clean energy transition is on everybody's lips. And what this is really about, that people are having a bit of a hodgy-bodgy about the fact that Africa is suddenly concentrating very much on investing into gas. And I've been on record during this show a couple of times now, where I just feel that we're investing into an industry that has no long-term goal anymore. Even gas, if we look at gas at the moment, it's simply because Europe is under pressure, obviously because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And that has obviously brought them to the point where suddenly gas is, after all, greenish energy. And so Thomson Reuters Foundation actually says, are we greenwashing gas now? So activists such as Lorraine Chiponda, co-leader of Don't Gas Africa campaign, have branded promises to abate emissions from the extraction and use of fossil gas as a false solution and an attempt by the industry at greenwashing gas. So our governments must not fall into a trap of developing new gas infrastructure in Europe or Africa, which will continue to harm communities and enrich big polluters while winding up as stranded assets, she told a briefing of COP27 on Monday. So that is according to Reuters, that's Thomson Reuters Foundation. And I totally agree with that, because I think this is going beyond what we really need. Europe is really not going the right way as far as I'm concerned, America specifically not, in suddenly engaging Africa. And it's done on a big scale. As journalists, I receive mails from APO, that's Africa Press Organization, and it's sad to say that on an average day, we get at least 7 press releases all about gas and oil. They're obviously working on a united front together with AU, and I find it sad that Africa suddenly sees gas and oil as its big future, while we have alternative energy, renewable energy, green energy, other forms of renewable energy that we could rather invest in. We brought you a video as well.
We all come up together with the Paris Agreement because it's about our common future, our own continuity for our next generation. And I thank you so much for already what you are doing. And let's go together and win that race.
Extreme event struck during the ongoing pandemic, reminding us all that we cannot quarantine climate change.
We are the leaders of tomorrow, and each decision made today will affect us in one way or another, either today or tomorrow. I pledge for youth leadership in climate action.
Climate action is not an unnecessary distraction from the COVID-19 pandemic. On the contrary, a sustainable economic recovery from this pandemic is part of the solution to the climate crisis.
The fundamental injustice of the climate crisis is that the countries and communities that are least responsible for it continue to be at the sharp edge of devastating impacts, are experiencing loss and damage, and are never able to fully recover before the next disaster hits.
We must deal with all of these as we build a just recovery, a recovery that is based for working people on a new social contract, a recovery that's about jobs, jobs and jobs, climate-friendly jobs, a recovery that actually is founded on a floor of rights and environmental protection, and a recovery that sees universal social protection so that people have resilience against further shocks.
To achieve this, we need countries to announce ambitious nationally determined contributions, net zero targets, and effective adaptation plans. And of course, to honour their commitments on finance.
The COVID-19 pandemic has made global injustices clearer, leaving the most vulnerable again to receive the largest impacts, and that is women, youth, workers, members of the LGBTQI community, indigenous, Black, migrant communities all over the world. The reality of the pandemic exacerbates what the climate crisis has already shown us, that the vast majority of the people live under deep inequalities in political, economical, and social systems that benefit only the few.
We have been working hard to bring more and more members to the Race to Zero as the communicational campaign for the non-party stakeholders of the Climate Ambition Alliance.
My fellow farmers and I think that we can win this war on climate change, but we need ambition, a will to want change, radical collaboration, and then action, not talking shops, leading to outcome that can be replicated at scale. Farmers often forgotten and often treated as easy targets. In this war, we are anything but. We are a part of the solution and must not be left behind.
This is urgent. We need to at least halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action. The good news is that the race to zero has already begun, the race for a better world, a healthier, safer and fairer world.
So we are losing our winters. Now, for many others, climate change is much more severe. It impacts their livelihoods, and for some, it is an existential threat. It is urgent, and we must make every moment count.
In Bonn, we will advance our climate neutrality before 2035 goal with due diligence. A participatory process driven by civil society has been kicked off in these days. Your dialogues will set the course towards COP26.
We are potentially living in one of the most transformational moments in history. A moment where, if we get it right, we can recover from a global health crisis in a way that helps us address our existential climate change crisis. This is extraordinary. How many generations get an opportunity like this? We must rise to the challenge of our times.
Yeah, so while we're talking of global warming and gas and oil and all that sort of thing, there's been a new development on ReconAfrica. Now, you know that we've been reporting about that over and over. And 2 days ago, Canadian gas and oil exploration company Reconnaissance Energy Africa, that's ReconAfrica, announced the results of their Makandina 8.2 well in the Kavango region. And that hole is barely 7 kilometers from the first well at Kave, which you see us approaching here with the drone last year. And it's less than 900 meters away from the Omatako Omuramba, which is even closer than the Kave hole. There on the total left side, you see sort of the spots of the Omuramba looking out. So Omuramba is obviously the local lingua for a river. And anyway, so although geologically successful, a successful well, no commercially worthwhile hydrocarbon accumulation were encountered. This is likely due to the lack of a natural basin or a four-way opportunity. So that's what they said. And the reaction from various international gas and oil news portals put the announcements a bit into perspective. So the portal upstream.com had apparently missed the fact that this was already the third well, because they commented, first wildcat exploration well fails while operator seeks second well. Well, in fact, ReconAfrica is already looking to drill its fourth well in December. That is now the coming month. And the well site was formerly planned as Peace 2.7, and it's now known as Wisdom Well 5.1. And viable oil or gas has been found at 8.2, upsetting the company's plan to find a partner, or no viable oil or gas has been found at 8.2, upsetting the company's plan to find a partner to fund future drilling, is what Upstream reported further. And so the Recon stock is now really in free fall. Quite a lot of the other energy platforms reported how it has been very disappointing. EnergyVoice.com, in fact, said ReconAfrica shares plummet and disappoint. And so it carries on. And they're talking of, Energy Voice speaks of a 39% drop. Fact is, I reported on that in Friday's paper. That's the Allgemeine Zeitung, now the German one. And in there, before I finished my article, I quickly had a look at the Yahoo Finance site, and they reckon the stock stood at Canadian dollar 2.10. Now you must remember, on 14th September, they were still at 5.93. And last year sometime, they in fact had actually still been up there and close to 14 Canadian dollars. Now, out of this video here, I actually cut a photo for you. So if we look at the photo quickly, you will see there's a sort of a dog leg that I brought in there. That's the road. You see the Kawe borehole, as I described earlier. And then the road makes a little turn towards the back there, and that's where you find Makandina 8.2, which is, as the crow flies, not even 7 kilometers away from Kawe. So that clearly has brought a bit of a problem for ReconAfrica, because what's happened now is last time they reckon they only have enough funds to still drill that borehole, and then furthermore to finish their phase 2 of the seismic assessment that they're busy with up there. So the question is now, where do they find another financially strong partner, especially now that the shares have dipped the way that they have. Anyway, so that's it. Up next, we also look at the Finkenstein Christmas market, like I said earlier. So it's this morning, so if you want to go, you need to go there fast. I mean, you've basically got 3 hours left, but I'm quite sure that if you go there, you might still find a couple of interesting presents and ideas for Christmas. So I just thought I'd give you that reminder, Saturday morning from 8 till 1300. Yes, and those were our topics for today. Up next, we've got destinations. Right, first up as destination this week, we've got Seidarap. Seidarap, it's Seidarap Guesthouse. It's very close to Grootfontein, as you can see there. It's actually as you drive out towards Tsumeb, which is that road leading towards the northwest there. You see Seidarap, and then further on you see the meteorite. But here's Seidarap a bit closer at Grootfontein. As you can see, it's really not a distance, just outside the town. And it's really along the C42. As you can see there, that's a bit of a close-up. It's the C42 that leads to Tsumeb. It is ideally located as you want to visit Etosha National Park or Waterberg Plateau Park, depending on where you go. So we've got a couple of photos here. As you can see here, it's a very old building that they've made up very nicely. Yeah, it's like I said, it's sort of a halfway mark if you want to go up to Etosha, depending on whether you come from South Africa or Botswana. If you pass along the road that comes from Gobabis through to Grootfontein these days, the tar road, and if you're on your way to the Caprivi or Bushmanland or Wambeland, it's always worth a stop. As they put it, you might just actually like it so much that you actually spend more than just one night there. So every room has its own private bathroom with toilets and shower with hot water, and obviously these are spacious double rooms. They've got 10 of those, but we actually brought you a video which Elvira Hatting prepared for us.
Yes, I'm Stefan Lukaszek, born in Namibia. My grandfather was born already here from my mother's side. And yeah, we're situated 4 kilometers out of Grootfontein on the way to Tsumeb on the C42.
Okay, and this is the Seidarap Guesthouse. Maybe tell us about this guest house and also the name, quite interesting name.
Yeah, I bought the plot, actually the house from my parents, and then I decided to build it into a guest house. And yeah, we have 10 rooms, and yeah, actually I did a lot of things by myself. The beds, lot of things produced by myself. And yeah, the house or the plot's name is Seidarap, that did my grandfather already. And if you read it backwards, it's German paradise. Paradies auf Deutsch.
Okay, quite amazing. And I've just had a walk around the premises. It is beautiful. I think it's a paradise in itself in full right. Would you maybe tell us what is here to do, what is to see here?
Yeah, what's very seldom is we have a lot of trees. We have a mango tree, we have avocados, lemon, lime, all these things grow here because we have a lot of water, and yeah, and the surrounding here, yeah, we're actually on the way to Etosha. We have the metro right here in Grootfontein itself. We have a nice museum, and yeah, also for the people from Windhoek or even from Etosha going to Caprivi, it's a actually lovely place to stay overnight.
Definitely. Also, who do you cater for? Who typically comes and stay over?
No, we don't have typically people. Everybody can sleep over here. Okay. Due to the bookings from overseas, mostly of Germany, we have a lot of people from Germany who sleeps over here because they book in advance, and then it's a pity we often fully booked.
Okay. Maybe, Stefan, I don't know if you want to, maybe in German, to your German clients, want to maybe welcome them, invite them to stay at Seidarap.
I won't say they have to stay at Seidarap, but they are welcome to come to Namibia. Also herzlich willkommen, wenn ihr nach Namibia kommen wollt, kommt nach Namibia. Und wenn ihr einen Zwischenstopp sucht zwischen Etosha und Caprivi oder Windhoek, Etosha, dann seid ihr alle herzlich willkommen im Paradies.
Dankeschön.
Right, and that was Seidarap Guesthouse. Up next, we quickly have a look at Amanzi Trails River Adventures. Now, some of you might remember we brought you Amanzi before. What you actually see here is that yellow line is really the border between South Africa and Namibia. Amanzi Trails River Adventures being very close to Noord-Oever, just outside. And you've basically got a canoe trip going right all the way down the Orange River. A huge experience. Here you can see the water at the bottom, so this is not a dirty picture, it's actually the Orange River, the yellow line being the border between Namibia and South Africa, and that's really the setup of Amanzi Trails River Adventures. They're obviously there in the middle of those places where you grow wine and so on. This is Chloe Durr, who actually prepared these pictures still. She once did the trip for us together with her dad. And so Amanzi Trails River Adventures really specializes in coordinating memorable Orange River rafting adventures. They do this for groups of all sizes and ages, and as you can see, it's some magic surrounding that you do it. It is approximately 700 kilometers away from Cape Town, or for that matter, then obviously 900 k's away from Windhoek as you go towards the Orange River. And it is situated on the northern banks of the Orange River, close to the town and border of Noord-Oever, as I showed you there. And it boasts quite a number of attractions close by. So you can also extend your visit to the Richtersveld landscape. You you can take part in the Fish River Canyon hiking experience, or simply go there and visit ice, have a nice visit to that little hot water spring site. So the picturesque town of Liddritz is actually not that far away anymore, because you can literally continue from there to Roshbina and go up to Aas before you go to Liddritz. So quite a lot of interesting areas, but I think this river trip is really what makes it for me. So it's something that I thought I should just bring to you. Now, the reason we got hold of Amanzi was quite simply because they actually were part of our expo, the Tourism Expo last week. So we just had a quick chat to them.
Waarna ek ook baie uitsien is om te sien wat Namibië bied by al die stalletjies. Ek dink in die toerisme industrie moet ons hande vat. Ons is nie meer in die verlede waar jy soos 'n uil op 'n kleit sit of op 'n eiland sit waar dit net oor jouself gaan nie. Ek dink in die industrie as jy nie mekaar help nie, dan gaan jy ergens van die bus afval. So ek sien uit daarna om die mense te ontmoet wat ook hulle besighede hierso kom uitstal.
Yeah, unfortunately that interview, well, unfortunately, it is in Afrikaans. Afrikaans being a language that many of us still speak and understand in Namibia. Essentially what he said is it's time to realize what we've always been saying on this show, that Namibia is not an island, and neither is South Africa. We need to start coordinating our activities as a region and see what we can do to see how one country can help the other and lead tourism streams from one area into the next, to give the tourism and the visitor, that's obviously you, one of the better experiences, instead of just hugging it all to ourselves and not sharing as a region. Anyway, those were our destinations today. Up next, we've got to the point.
We all drive, but what do you drive for?
I drive for the sound.
I drive for turns like this.
We drive for the airtime.
I drive for the challenging conditions.
I drive for these night lights.
I drive for the uphill battle. I drive for the acceleration.
Hey, I drive for that too.
We understand why you drive. That's why Shell Helix fully synthetic motor oils are made from natural gas, designed for ultimate engine performance. Drive on.
Yeah, the funny thing about items such as this climate conference in Egypt at the moment, you know, the COP29, basically at COP27, I must say, Yolanda Nell actually took a look at 10 insights into climate science, which was discussed during the United Nations Climate Change Conference. And the insights of these reports are actually quite alarming and provides information on where urgent implementation is needed. Now, often you find that these sort of snippets, they just disappear. Most of us don't even know about them, and that's why we decided to share them with you. So it is Wendy Broadgate. She's Global Hub Director, Future Earth, based in Sweden. And then Simon Steele, he's the UN Climate Change Executive Secretary. And Johan Rockström, he's the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. And so just have a look at what they have to tell us.
So the 10 New Insights in Climate Science is a joint initiative of Future Earth, Earth League, and the World Climate Research Programme. The annual report series synthesizes the latest climate science-related research for the international science policy community. Since 2017, the reports have been launched at the Climate COP with the UNFCCC Executive Secretary, and we're very glad to be continuing this tradition with Mr. Simon Steele. This report was prepared by a consortium of 65 leading researchers from 23 countries. It responds to clear calls for policy guidance during this climate-critical decade.
Science is at the heart of everything that we do. Amongst the thousands of people here, all from different parts of the world, science is our common language. It's the foundational element that informs this process, and one that needs to be counted on. Science provides the evidence and data on the impacts of climate change, but it also gives us the tools and knowledge as to how we need to address it. The insights provided by this report are alarming, confirming some of what we already know, and give us insights into other areas where urgent action is needed. I want to pick up on one insight from the 10 as it confirms what I've been discussing in recent weeks, that adaptation alone cannot keep up with the impacts of climate change, which are already far worse than originally predicted. Don't get me wrong, adaptation actions are still crucial and are critical to upgrade small-scale, fragmented, and reactive efforts. But as your report says, the potential to adapt to climate change is not limitless, and they will not prevent all losses and damage that we have seen.
Insight number one, just like Simon Steele points out, is building actually on the 2021 10X, where we concluded that 1.5 is not a goal, it's a physical limit. Go beyond it and we are likely to trigger tipping points. But now we have more and more scientific evidence that it also poses limits to adaptation. This is really serious. Go beyond 1.5 and we risk going beyond what particularly vulnerable communities can cope with, reach 2 degrees, and we are at a point where it's worth repeating that adaptation can under no circumstance substitute mitigation. That we have vulnerability hotspots which cluster around regions at risk, and we're today able to identify these hotspot regions of social, economic risks across the world, and that 1.6 billion people already today live in vulnerability hotspots, a number that will double in 2050 if we continue burning fossil fuels as today. Dear friends, that's 1/3 of the world's population living in regions that are approaching limitations of adaptation and being at risk of social instability. Next. Insight number 3. We have evidence of new threats on the horizon from climate health interactions. This is a rapidly emerging field of research where health scientists and climate change scientists are putting forward the evidence that the impacts of climate change on health for both humans, animals, and ecosystems are today widespread and emerging and rising rapidly. Next, please. Insight number 4. Climate mobility, a really rapidly advancing area of scientific evidence on the ground, which is showing increasingly that climate change is causing a threat amplifying for displacement, migration, potentially pushing societies towards conflict. If you take the next slide here, Insight 5, human security requires climate security. If you take all these 4 insights together, that we are at risk of reaching limits of adaptation, we have climate health impacts, we have larger risk of climate mobility, we also have rising evidence that if we want to have a secure and peaceful future, we need to address climate change very rapidly, and that this is something which is now being at the forefront, even conflicts being triggered and amplified by the risks of climate change. Sustainable land use is essential to meet climate targets. This was a very central topic in Glasgow at COP26. It is centrally now mainstreamed within the whole climate negotiations. The scientific evidence is crystal clear. The IPCC shows that 25% of emissions of greenhouse gases are absorbed by intact nature. We have Insight 7, private sustainable finance practices are failing to catalyze deep transitions. This is a really significant part of research where we are today, unfortunately, finding that all the good work on sustainable finance are still operating within the current existing business models, which are not substantially shifting the allocation of capital towards meaningful mitigation, meaning that we're still doing a lot of good work on finance, but it's only scratching on the surface and not really having the deep indent on shifting the financial flows at the pace and scale required. Insight 8, one of the big agendas for COP27 on loss and damage. The scientific community concludes that this is an urgent planetary imperative. We need coordinated global policy response on loss and damage. You take the next slide, please. It is, though, a complex and challenging agenda. Current impacts are causing unavoidable loss and damage, where we need measures for finance, shown in the lower part here, on insurance, social protection, humanitarian actions, reparation investments, but that we also need equal amount of investments to avoid future impacts causing increasing loss and damages that we may not even be able to cope with. Insight 9, inclusive decision-making for climate resilient development is an imperative and needed. This is, a lot of the social sciences are now, not surprisingly, showing how we need to get local scales, local needs, local communities, multi-stakeholders engaged to have any chance of robust climate policy implementation. The most complex one and the biggest one, we have increasing scientific evidence that, well, we have unequivocal scientific evidence that systems changes are required to be able to decarbonize the world economy at this pace required. But we are not seeing those system changes out there in the real world. We need to break down many of the structural barriers that are upstream causing our inability to really move away from incremental change to transformative change.
Right, and just so that you do not only think we bring you what the others have to say about the world, I'll bring you another video clip of an IPPR discussion that was held in Namibia this week. Have a look.
What is like climate change, like you said? Yeah. And let's just start off by what's the weather, you know? We all know it's cold outside. We love looking at our apps and be like, is it like hot? Is it cold? What do I need to wear? Is it gonna rain? And essentially that's the weather. And climate is the trend in weather over a long period of time, oftentimes centuries. And so that essentially is what climate is. And if you think about what climate change is essentially the change of the normal climate for a region from away from its norm in a very short period of time. So climate changing is normal. It happens over millennia usually. And this allows our environmental systems to adapt to these changes as it happens, because it happens over such a long time. The reason why we're concerned about climate change now is that it's happening so rapidly. And this is due to like human interference, us releasing all these like greenhouse gases. So we're essentially heating up the climate system a whole lot quicker than it would have naturally. So,
but I know Namibia is one of the countries, and even Africa in general is one of the continents that contributes less to climate change. So why would you say Namibians should care about it if we are not even contributing to it as much?
Unfortunately for us, that's not how global systems work. We may be the ones contributing the least to it, but we are unfortunately the ones that are being affected the most. And we should care because it doesn't just, it's not something that starts and ends in the lab or starts and ends with researchers or policymakers, but it touches Namibian lives every single day. You know, when you're having extremely high temperatures and you have your livestock dying or people having heat strokes and things like that, that touches you to a personal level. When we're having floods, you know, these are things that we see all the time in the north. This causes damages to infrastructure. Children cannot go to school. We have diseases being spread. We have loss of livestock. We have loss of crops, which in turn affects people's food security. So it really isn't something that's like out in the air and like we should not be caring about it. This is a huge problem for us in our personal lives. And this is even made worse amongst vulnerable groups. So we already have these pressures on vulnerable groups such as women and children. And then you add these kind of adverse effects that we're expecting, and we can see it. We can see like the extreme cold events, the snow in the south and in the east. These are very unusual events for our country, and livestock has been lost, lives have been lost.
Yeah, but how do you think, what is some of the effects that we can still expect, that we're not feeling as hard now, but in the future may become worse or become reality in Namibia?
Namibia is one of the few countries or regions that's slowly starting to feel it. So like on an international level, you have this whole like we cannot go past like 2 degrees Celsius and so forth. But for Namibia, that's even less, just because of how like extreme our current climate already is. So we're expected increased flooding events, increased drought events, increased temperatures. And these like translate, again, as I said, it translates into our food security issues. It translates into infrastructure being damaged, again, having economic implications. Spread of diseases, like these are things we don't think about, but we could have diseases like malaria spreading from where it like originally is like up in the north, spreading further down when the climate becomes suitable for it to happen. So we have these effects. We have it on diseases for animals as well, plant diseases, which again feed into our food security, feeds into our health. So it really is such a complex system. It's not one thing or the other. And it's concerning less water for us as well. So we have to find like innovative ways. Namibia is already water scarce. So that will put a huge pressure on our water systems, as is land use changes, having less and less land to like do agriculture on. And so, we need to be prepared.
Right, and there we have it. Our COP climate conference is coming to an end tomorrow, if I'm right. But fact is, I think it's time to act, and I certainly believe there must be alternatives that we need to find. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show this week, and I say goodbye, and I'll be seeing you in another 7 days, same time, same place. Until then, remain well. Bye.